Hello, my name is Amy and today we are doing the fall book tag. I saw Amrita by the Books video for this tag and normally I would have just liked it and things would have ended there, but overnight the temperature where I currently am dropped by about 40 degrees. It was in the 80s yesterday where it's been hovering for the past couple of weeks and all of a sudden it dropped down to the low 40s and the sky is cloudy and gray outside and it actually feels like fall here for once, so I'm very excited about that. I'm less excited about this next part. Yesterday, I saw this monster outside my window. My friends and coworkers tell me that this thing is called a wheel bug. I have never heard of that before, but whatever it is, it's almost 2 inches long and very, very fat, and apparently incredibly resilient because last night it was raining, it was super windy, and like I said, the temperature dropped down to the low 40s. And I have never seen bugs be comfortable in weather below 65 degrees Fahrenheit, but this morning I woke up and this thing is still outside my window. Though, I don't know if it's just me, it looks a bit more shriveled up now. Maybe it's dead. I really hope it didn't die in the window screen because then I'd have to find a way to pry its corpse off. That would be just a pain in the ass. But if it is alive, then it is now my tenant and I expect it to pay rent by killing bugs that appear on my window because that is what Wikipedia says that this thing does. It can kill bugs up to the size of a grasshopper, so I don't want to see any bugs on my screen this upcoming week, just FYI. Anyways, the questions. In fall, the air is crisp and clear. Name a book with a vivid setting. So, I can't even begin to count the number of times that I have thought to myself after finishing a book, wow, this book had such vivid imagery. I felt like I was there. But now that I'm being asked this question, I can't really think of anything. I guess the first book that comes to mind is actually Amberlough by Lara, Elena, Donnelly. I remember this book was labeled a glam vintage spy thriller when it first came out, and that first part is actually true, but to me it's more of a glam spy vintage fantasy novel. It's set in this fictional city called Amberlough, and it resembles many Western cities during the 1920s, so the golden age, the jazz age, lots of opulence, lots of glamour, cabaret shows, smuggling, fascism. Because this book is set on the verge of a fascist government takeover in the country where our protagonists reside, there are 3 point of view characters. First is Cyril DePaul, who is this secret agent type from a long line of big-name politicians and diplomats. There's also Aristide Macricosta, who basically runs the city's underground. He has a hand in all the smuggling and like the shady side of the businesses and everything. And there's also Cordelia Lehane, who is a cabaret dancer at the nightclub where Aristide moonlights as a performer, and where Cyril himself tends to hang out because he and Aristide have this tryst that they've been carrying on behind the government's backs. Cordelia is my favorite character out of this whole trilogy and out of the 3 of them. I have read 2 out of the 3 books by now. The 3rd book is already out. I just haven't gotten around to reading it yet, mostly because I've been saving it. But Cordelia is a character who, in my opinion, just defies stereotypes. Like, all 3 of the characters are fascinating in their own right. Cyril is like this anti-hero, and I'm a big fan of morally gray characters. Lucky me, because it seems like that's the main thing that everyone's writing nowadays. Aristide is very clever, and he knows everyone, and I just always want to see like who he's going to introduce to us next. But Cordelia is just, she's the character that I am rooting for the most. The other 2, they've got this like whole Hollywood romance drama thing going on, but Cordelia, she just steals the show, in my opinion. So I really hope that she comes out of this alive, thriving, and happy. Nature is beautiful, but also dying. Name a book that is beautifully written, but also deals with a heavy topic like loss or grief. So, kind of a weird choice maybe for this one, but I'm going to say that for me, a book that dealt with loss and grief in what I thought was a beautiful manner is my favorite sci-fi novel, Hyperion, by Dan Simmons. It's part of a series. I've only read the first book, and I read it a really long time ago, so I can't remember all the details of it anymore, but I do remember that there are 7 pilgrims who are all from different backgrounds and different worlds, like actual different worlds, different planets and everything, who are selected to be part of this pilgrimage to the time tombs of Hyperion. And the time tombs are these artifacts that can move backward in time. And at this location on Hyperion, they're hoping to find this creature called the Shrike, who is a god or demon-like figure, depending on who you're talking to, who can control time and also likes to impale victims on the spikes and thorns that protrude out of its body. Lovely image. Each of the pilgrims has their own reason for going on this pilgrimage and seeking out the Shrike, and the novel is composed of each of their individual stories that they're telling each other to pass time while they're on this airship sky tree thing that is heading towards the Time Tombs. From what I can recall, the stories encompass several different sci-fi genres. So there's a story that's set like during a war, and I think the main character's love interest is part of the resistance, deals with like imperialism, colonialism. And there's another one that is set in a cyberpunk universe, and it's more of a mystery type thing. I just remember like these stories can be read individually as separate standalone stories, but of course they're all connected and all the characters are connected to each other. Most of the stories feature heavy loss in some way, and I remember that when I was a teenager reading this, I felt super devastated by just how tragic some of the stories were. There's just all this doomed love and just families broken apart, and I kept thinking, no wonder these people are willing to risk their lives to seek out the Shrike, whether it's for answers or for revenge or whatever. Fall is back to school season. Share a nonfiction book that taught you something new. So my choice for this is Chop Suey Nation, The Legion Cafe and Other Stories from Canada's Chinese Restaurants by Anne Hui. Anne Hui is a Canadian journalist who took a road trip with her husband from one end of Canada to the other. And if you've seen Canada, you all know how big it is. They basically went from small town to small town in order to write this story for her workplace about why there are Chinese restaurants in every town in Canada. Like, no matter how small or how remote, there just happens to be a Chinese restaurant there. And Anne noticed this and was curious as to why this is the case. And she also wanted to know the stories of the people who run these restaurants and how they got to be where they are now. So before I read this book, I actually wasn't sure what chop suey was. Like, I've heard the term used all my life, but I always thought it was just some American-made Chinese food item, like a fortune cookie. But it turns out I eat chop suey way more than I thought, and I'm sure most of you do too, because chop suey is just what they call an authentic Chinese food, like the stuff you would find at Panda Express. Stuff like chow mein and sweet and sour pork that's vaguely Chinese-inspired or uses Chinese-inspired flavors. But which region of China did it actually come from? Nobody knows, because it's probably not actually from any region in China. American construct, but that came around because of substitutions and adaptations that Chinese immigrants had to make once they came over to the United States, to Canada. This book delves into the history of that, and talks to all the families who own restaurants in these small towns, and they're often the only Asian people in the entire vicinity. So she learns from them that chop suey became a thing because early Chinese families who, due to discrimination and bigotry and all that, were restricted to running laundromats or grocery stores or restaurants. So they would adapt their original Chinese recipes to suit the taste buds of their white customers that would come in. So the customers often expected something Chinese, but they couldn't handle the authentic Chinese flavors. Therefore, this new fusion thing was born. And other Chinese restaurant owners would hear about it whenever there was a successful recipe and would come up with similar recipes. And before you knew it, this whole new food category called chop suey was born. I found this book to be unexpectedly moving. I didn't think a book about Chinese food, inauthentic Chinese food at that, would be so poignant, but the stories about the sacrifices and challenges that these families overcame and the hardships that they endured, the loneliness of being the only Asian people in a place, these stories kind of hit home for me, even though I grew up in the suburbs around other Asian people. And moreover, the descriptions of the actual, the chop suey dishes, even though they are not, like I said, not authentic dishes, I actually like eating chop suey, and I really felt like going to get Chinese takeout once I was done reading it. And especially today, on a cold day like this, Chinese food just sounds awesome. In order to keep warm, it's good to spend some time with the people we love. Name a fictional family, household, / friend group that you'd like to be a part of. Gosh, there are so many groups. How do I pick? There are so many fictional friend groups over the years that I can see myself being a part of. I'm going to go ahead and pick one of the volleyball teams, any of the main ones really, from the manga Haikyuu. And I'm finally finishing up season 4 of the anime, so that's probably why that's in my head. I just adore these kids so much. They are so passionate, so funny, energetic, smart. They are great friends to each other, and it makes me miss my days playing sports back in high school. I think I would have had a lot of fun hanging out with them back when I was a high schooler, so that's why I'm picking the volleyball teams from Haikyuu. The colorful leaves are piling up on the ground. Show us a pile of fall-colored spines. So coincidentally, the books that I have to read next for my work assignment are these three. Let me show you. I would say these are fall-colored spines, right? They look pretty fall-colored to me. They're all graphic novels. One is Dragon Hoops by Jin Wen-yang. I think this is about a Chinese basketball team. I'm not quite sure. I think I've heard people talk about it. I would have to check it out, but I'll let you know in my review once I'm done with that. There's also Superman Smashes the Klan, again by Jin Wen-yang, and I'm assuming they just feature Superman and some like Chinese-American characters. Again, I don't really know the summary of it, but I do remember I heard an interview with Jin Wen-yang when he was talking about how surprised he was that there were Chinese-American characters that appeared in Superman, even like the comics, even back in the day. So I'm assuming this is what this book is about. And there's also Flamer by Mike Curato. I think this is a coming out story. I am not sure because I didn't actually read the summaries for them. I figured since they're graphic novels, I should just dive right in and see what I'm getting, like, without any preconceptions in my head ahead of time. Fall is the perfect time for some storytelling by the fireside. Share a book wherein somebody is telling a story. Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. And I swear I'm not copying this from Amrita, but I kind of am because I'm filming this just now. But when I was watching her video, as soon as she read the question, I immediately thought of Name of the Wind as well, just because the premise of the book. This is the first book out of a trilogy called The Kingkiller Chronicles. The third book isn't out yet, and I've delayed reading the second one just because I'm a procrastinator, and I knew I wouldn't have to worry about spoilers since it's been 10 years and the third book still isn't out. But the entire book is just this protagonist, Kavoth, I actually don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's telling his own origin story. And this guy has a bit of a reputation, to put it lightly. He is telling this chronicler about how he went from being the son of traveling entertainers, like his dad is a very famous bard, to becoming this widely known warrior and sorcerer who apparently killed a king, hence the name Kingkiller. But now he's just sitting around running this bar under a fake identity, waiting to die, quote. So I also want to know why he is the way he is and how he got to where he is. So I am looking forward to reading the second book, and I do hope that by the time I finally get around to it, the third book will be almost coming out, so I don't have to wait, because I'm probably going to forget again. The nights are getting darker. Share a dark, creepy read. This is not a book, it's actually a podcast. I'm obsessed with it, so I'm going to share it. The Magnus Archives from Rusty Quill Productions. I brought this up multiple times before because it's honestly just become a part of my daily routine. Like, I do dishes, I listen to the Magnus Archives. I make food, I listen to the Magnus Archives. I clean, I listen to the Magnus Archives. The story is set up as a series of case files involving the supernatural. So each episode is a different testimony on some creepy encounter or experience that somebody's had, usually around the London area. The premise is that the narrator, Jonathan Sims, is the new head archivist at the Magnus Institute, which is this place in London that researches the occult and the paranormal. And he's just taken over from his predecessor, who disappeared and has been presumed dead. She was apparently very disorganized because her archives are a mess, and Jonathan, who I think is a bit anal retentive, is extremely bothered by this, so he decides to organize her cases and weed out all the ones that he thinks are BS and cannot be corroborated. So he starts recording the written testimonies that these witnesses gave using a tape recorder. And that's what we, the audience, are listening to, is his recordings. However, as he makes his way through the archives, he starts to realize that many of the cases that he's recording are connected, and some of them are linked to his predecessor's disappearance. So he and his co-workers, who are his team of researchers, start being targeted by some of the things that appear in the testimonies, and he becomes obsessed with investigating the truth of the matter. So I'm almost 80 episodes in, which I'm very excited about because episode 80 is not only the end of season 2, it's also titled The Librarian, so I really want to see what that's about. The days are getting colder. Name a short, heartwarming read that could warm up somebody's cold and rainy day. So for this one, I'm picking Ani no Hanashi by Ike Reibun. This is a manga from the perspective of a little boy named Fumi. Mom is a single mom and she's always working, so he's pretty much raised by his older brother. I think they have a bit of an age gap, so the older brother's in like his last years of high school and the little boy is like below, like underneath 10 years old. And the brother also helps take care of their grandmother who's bedridden and can't work or take care of Fumi at home. So the brother, who I don't think has a name, like he's just referred to as older brother, but he starts to bring his best friend home to hang out more and more frequently. And you find out later on that this best friend is more than just a friend, and this ends up creating a rift between the brother and their mom once she finds out. But since the story is told from Fumi's perspective, he doesn't know all the details. He doesn't fully understand the situation, but he does know that his brother stops bringing the friend around and appears a lot more withdrawn and sad. And he also runs into the friend outside in like the city, and he notices that the friend looks sad as well. And it's just very heartwarming because despite not knowing all these details, like Fumi just really loves his brother, and he stands up for him and fully supports him. And because of that, like the mother eventually comes around. I know I'm totally spoiling it, but I just want you to know that this story is just so adorable and it fully restored my faith in humanity, so I highly recommend it. Fall returns every year. Name an old favorite you'd like to return to soon. So, for this one, it has to be Lord of the Rings. I used to read this book every single year around December or January, probably because it was my winter break. And then after I went to grad school, I started reading it every other year, and then now I haven't read it for the past 2 years just because I live out of state now, and for Christmas I'm usually traveling back to my home state to visit my family and friends, and there's just no time to be at home and read really. So and by the time I get back here, I go back to work. So this year, because of COVID, I'm probably not going to be going home to visit my family and friends, which kind of sucks, but at the same time it allows me to have 2 weeks of free time where I can sit around and just read. So I plan to do my reread again this year. It's about time. Fall is the perfect time for cozy reading nights. Share your favorite cozy reading accessories. I'm not really sure what this is talking about. I don't really have any accessories. I guess this hoodie counts as one. I got this from Sydney, Australia because I was visiting my family there, and it was during my summer, which is their winter, and when I landed, I found out the airline had left my suitcase back in the United States. So while they were shipping that over to me, I had to go get myself. I had a change of clothes and like my outer coat, but I didn't have like a sweatshirt or anything to wear. And I was staying with my cousin that weekend, and his house is freezing cold because he's an athlete and he just doesn't get cold as easily as I do. So he drove me to Target and I picked up this thing, which it's just this plain black hoodie, but it's so comfortable. It's like my favorite hoodie to wear at home right now. So every time it gets cold, I break out the hoodie, and so I guess it counts as a cozy reading accessory. I think that ended up being a blessing in disguise in the end, because I got not only this hoodie, I also got some skincare products and this cute red pinafore dress that I would never have gotten in stores over here. But I got that as my second day outfit before my suitcase finally got there, and I got reimbursed for all those items, so yay! Spread the autumn appreciation and tag some people. I don't really have anyone specific in mind that I want to tag, but I think this tag is for everybody. Like basically, if your heart compels you to answer this tag, I think you should do it, just because, especially if you're in a place like me where suddenly it got cold and you're in the mood for it, this would be a fun tag to do, and I would kind of like to see what everybody else comes up with for all these answers. Anyways, I'm going to end now, and have a good day, everybody. I will see you again soon. Bye!